Hello, my name is Sarah Hutchins. I am Head of Engagement at Brain in Hand. This is a pre-recorded video of explaining what Brain in Hand is, what a typical Brain in Hand specialist support session is, and also a demonstration of the Brain in Hand system. The best way to explain Brain in Hand is to break it down into 3 parts. The first part, personal planning session with a Brain in Hand specialist to get started. Currently, we have over 70 Brain in Hand specialists across the UK. All of our Brain in Hand specialists are practitioners in their field. Some are from mental health nurse backgrounds, occupational therapists, social workers, or teaching backgrounds. The Brain in Hand specialist offers a tailored approach. They use a personalised blended approach which includes module workbook materials designed to enable students to use strength-based thinking to identify achievable goals. They will deliver at least 4 hours of face-to-face or remote personal planning sessions to develop solution-focused and practical strategies and enable students to develop the skills to identify their own solutions to overcome their own specific barriers to learning. Brain in Hand does not replace human support. It requires human support for it to be a successful tool. The second part of Brain in Hand is the software, which promotes independence by providing students with a simple but smart website. The student can organise their day in a diary, plan and set reminders for each day's routines, break down tasks into simple steps, initially using the workbook with a Brain in Hand specialist, then independently or collaboratively with their supporters. They can add information about the problems they face and the solutions they can use to overcome them. You can also add links to helpful resources such as timetables, work or study materials, or maps, so that the student can find the right information whenever you need it. In the student's own words, all of this advice is then available on their phone via the Brain in Hand application, wherever and whenever a student needs it, to quickly find their best solutions to day-to-day challenges and unexpected events, so that ideas are independently remembered, used and reinforced. It also empowers students to build new habits. We understand not all features of Brain in Hand software will be appropriate for every student. The Brain in Hand specialist will support the individual to develop their account in a way that's best for their needs. The third part of Brain in Hand is a traffic light support system, encouraging students to record how well solutions have worked for them and to reflect on how they are feeling. This helps students to identify and reward their successes and to highlight difficulties. They could press on green, which means all is good, amber, I'm not feeling great but do not need any extra support, red, I'm not feeling too great and maybe need to talk to someone to get my day back on track. The traffic lights can prompt remind students to regularly think about progress and to capture their patterns of high or low mood, because particularly when anxious, some students will need a little extra help to recognise how well they are doing. The platform also offers round-the-clock support to its users. If someone needs extra help, they can use a traffic light system to let someone know they're struggling. Whether this is a Brain in Hand responder or somebody they already know, we are very clear this is not a crisis service and a replacement for 999 or 111. It is for the user to get their day back on track, to discuss that current situation with a Brain in Hand responder. Brain in Hand encourages individual reflection, enhancing communication between users and supporters. The timeline, which is part of the student's Brain in Hand website, provides a tangible, visual cue to enable students and their supporters to communicate effectively. Through reviewing the solutions they have used, alongside information about their well-being, you can work together to identify patterns, discuss difficulties, emphasise successes and achievements, and help structure time together to come up with new, useful, effective strategies. If you can think about the learners who may be able to identify what situations they find difficult, but then in that moment they either cannot recall their best thinking or unable to choose between a number of options, they cannot put a series of steps in place, or are too anxious to try to do something new, this is when Brain in Hand becomes a great support tool. I will now hand you over to a video of what a typical Brain in Hand specialist setup session can look like.
What is a personal planning session? Brain in Hand is a digital support system, but human support forms an important part of the onboarding process. This support might include personal planning sessions, ongoing support and reviews. The Brain in Hand workbook frames the personal planning sessions, and there are 5 modules to complete. We ask users to complete the first module prior to the first planning session, either on their own or with a supporter. This gives users a chance to think about their current support, their strengths, values and successes, and areas of life they would like to focus on to see positive change. Users can also think about goals they would like to set for themselves. Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'll just talk you through what we're going to get done today.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we'll basically get your account set up, check there's no problems with your account, make sure the personal information is all filled out okay. You've already begun to fill out your workbook, so we're kind of starting here. I'll ask you to talk me through module 1, and then we'll work out and we'll get a sense together of what you're going to use Brain in Hand for and how that's going to work for you. Then we'll begin to think about how to break down some of the issues that might be coming up for you, and break those down in a way that is going to be useful to put into your Brain in Hand system.
The setups are very user-led, and we'll try to help them identify their own strategies for things where they can, as having something in their own words and it being their decision makes it more likely that they're going to sort of engage with that in the future when they need to. But if somebody is having difficulty thinking about what they might want to do in a situation, we'll offer suggestions of maybe what we've seen have worked for other people in different settings.
The specialist and the user then work together to identify the features of Brain in Hand that might be useful and how to use them. Okay, so this is really about breaking something down now to the point where we've talked about what's important to you and what you value, and we've looked at how your life is currently being affected by certain difficulties or things that you would like to change. So on this page, managing difficult situations, we're beginning to really narrow that down, so we can begin to start thinking about how you're going to put these changes into Brain in Hand in a way that's going to be helpful.
Sure.
The user leads the session, while the specialist will encourage positive problem solving by helping the user identify strategies and responses based on their current strengths and goals. What do you think you could either tell yourself or action that you might be able to take to get yourself going, or to prioritise?
So I think I should probably try and get in a habit of having like lists or some sort of thing that says what needs to be done.
Okay. So what would be the first thing you would do then in that circumstance?
So I want to put like a checklist, but I feel like I have to start making lists first.
Okay. So
I do sometimes.
So maybe one of the solutions might be start making lists. Let's just get that down. The workbook flows in a way that allows the user to think about their strategies and express solutions in their own words before inputting an enhanced system.
The strategies that are in Brain in Hand are always very useful for people to access when they are in a difficult situation. But the Brain in Hand system also gives people the option to request extra support when they need it via the traffic light system. The sort of response teams that we work with are very experienced in helping people use their own strategies to overcome situations where they might not be able to access their clear thinking as well.
The user will also test their red traffic light with a responder and understand how to monitor their mood throughout the day. By digitally recording events, problems and solutions, the user has access to helpful strategies in line with their goals at all times. Useful features such as reminders encourage users to focus on upcoming tasks, safe in the knowledge that they have the tools to cope. The way Brain in Hand is personalised is important and very different from offering generic tips and quick solutions. Templates can be helpful in offering examples and helping users access the system quickly and easily. Okay, all the activities that we've created, you can find them in here. So do you think between now and next session you'd be able to go through those and just delete out anything that you don't want?
Yeah, so I guess then everything that's left will be useful.
Everything that's left will be useful, yeah. And then we'll have a good basis to start the next session. We'll begin to add to it, personalise it and edit it even more. After the personal planning sessions, the user will be ready to start using Brain in Hand from their phone or other mobile device whenever they need it, accessing their personal strategies and requesting extra help from the responder service if they're finding things hard to cope with. The user will be able to learn and reflect on what works for them and use this to move forward.
I'd like to take the opportunity now to highlight the quality of support the students receive from a Brain in Hand specialist. The specialist will guide the student to start their journey with Brain in Hand by supporting them to develop solution-focused and practical strategies, enabling students to develop the skills to identify their own solutions and overcome their own specific barriers to learning. Throughout the life of the student subscription, the specialist and the Brain in Hand team remain available to them for reviews and planned check-in calls. Reports and insights based on each user's system data also allow us to get in touch with them or their support team when it looks like they could use some assistance proactively managing difficulties.
The Brain in Hand technology consists of two key elements. Firstly, we have the website, which is personal to each student and acts as a data entry point for any information that student would like to have access to in their account. Secondly, we have the mobile application, which acts as our access point for that information and also allows students to record how they're doing via the traffic light system. On first logging into the website, students are greeted with their home page. On this home page, we have a number of video tutorials, instructional guides, and other resources to help somebody get started with Brain in Hand. Using these resources, and with support from a Brain in Hand specialist, students can populate their accounts with any events, tasks and reminders, and any self-management strategies that they may need to access throughout the day. We have two main pages on the website to help students plan out their time and their support strategies. Firstly, we have the diary page. This diary page can be used for any timetabled or scheduled events that a student may have. That could be for events that are already timetabled, such as lectures and seminars, or it could be used to schedule events that the student would like to do more regularly, such as developing a more consistent morning routine. Within these events on the diary, students can set reminders and can break that event down into the activities that make up the event, which can then be broken down further into the problems that could occur and then the specific solutions that that student knows can help them in that moment. We can also colour code events in the diary to group similar events or to make important events stand out when the student comes to look at them. Any events that have been scheduled through the diary can easily be rearranged as plans change. As well as the diary page, students also have access to the unplanned page. The unplanned page can be used for any events that aren't necessarily bound to a specific time or could occur at any point during the week. This can be a really useful page for strategies relating to managing anxiety or for weekly tasks such as shopping or household chores. Let's look at the mobile application and see how that information is displayed. We're now looking at the mobile application. Students are first greeted with the diary page. This diary page will change every day depending on what events that student has in their calendar. Students can also use the calendar icon in the bottom left of the screen to scroll forwards and look at any upcoming events that they may have. If I go into one of these events, such as our morning routine, I've been able to break that event down into the different activities that make up the event. Inside each of those activities, such as getting to uni, I've been able to break it down further into the different problems or barriers that may arise in completing that activity. Within each of those problems, I can then assign my specific solutions that I know can help me overcome that difficult situation. If I click on I'm running late for my train, we can see the solutions here. That could be a mixture of reactive solutions, such as strategies to help manage the anxiety that that situation has caused, or it could be some proactive solutions, such as letting the appropriate person know they're running late. Where we have green text in some of those solutions, that means that a hyperlink has been added. Students can add hyperlinks to any web page, any phone number or email address, or any other resource that would be useful for them in that moment. If I click Book a taxi to take me to the station, we can see that the number has been saved there, and it stops the student having to search online or go through their contacts in that stressful situation. Where we have a clipboard icon next to some of our events on the diary page, that means a reminder has been set for that event and it's been created as a task. If I click on coursework deadline, for example, as before, I've been able to break that event down into the activities, the problems, and the solutions, but I also have the option to complete that event at the bottom of my screen. If I press complete on that event, we can see it ticks it off on the diary page, so the student has a quick visual cue of what they've already done for the day and what they still have left to do. If I swipe right on my screen, we can see our unplanned page. Where our diary page will change every day, our unplanned page will stay the same, so students will always have access to their unplanned events and strategies. If I click on How am I feeling at the top, we can see that in the same way as the diary page, we've been able to break that down into the activities, followed by our problems, and then the specific solutions. Within the mobile application, we also have the traffic light system that can be accessed at the bottom of our screen. There are a few different ways that students can use the traffic light system. Students can go into the system at any time and press on one of these buttons to record how they're feeling. If students would like to, they can ask the app to send them reminders at regular intervals of their choosing throughout the day, so they can keep track of how they're doing over a specific time period. Students can also use the traffic light system to request some extra support if they would need it. If a student was to press a red traffic light or 3 amber traffic lights throughout the day, a notification would be sent to the traffic light response service. They would then get back in touch with the student via their preferred contact method to talk them through the situation, and using the strategies in their Brain in Hand account, help them identify a plan to move forwards and continue with their day. All of our interactions within the Brain in Hand app are saved on their website's timeline, so students have a record of the events they've been doing, the strategies they've used, and the traffic lights they've been pressing. Let's go back to the website and see how that displays on the timeline. Students can get to their timeline through their homepage or through the main menu on their website. On the timeline, I can see all the interactions that I've just had with the system. For any strategies I've used, the timeline will record the event or activity I was doing, the problem I've encountered, and the solution that I used to overcome that problem. For our tasks, the timeline will record the task itself, the time that I'd set for that task, and then the time that I actually marked that task as complete within the system. Traffic lights will be recorded in their corresponding colour. Students can add comments to any of the items on their timeline to give themselves some more information. For solutions, that could be whether that solution worked as well as they would like, or whether that solution may need updating for use in the future. For tasks, it could be whether they needed to allow themselves more time, or whether they could adjust the deadline for that task. For traffic lights, it could be why they were feeling the way they were, or any more information that they feel would be relevant. If a student has pressed a red traffic light or 3 amber traffic lights in a row and had a conversation with a brain in hand traffic light responder, the responder they spoke to will leave a comment on that instance in their timeline, summarising the interaction they had with the student and any plans they'd made moving forwards. All of a student's interactions with Brain in Hand are therefore stored on their timeline, and that timeline can become a really useful review tool to see how strategies are working for them, whether there are any patterns of positives or patterns of difficulty throughout the week, and whether their account needs updating to better support them in the future.